Inspect and crunch numbers. What I forgot to mention is if you get into the property and you go, hey, this thing is way worse than I anticipated, and I did not know that the floor joists had termite damage, or I did not know that the sewer line leading out from the house to the septic tank was busted, or I did not know that this thing had a fire damage in the attic, whatever that is. Your inspection period protects you in that if you find some kind of unacceptable condition of the property, you can cancel the contract. You can cancel it and you can move on and not lose your money. Usually your earnest money deposit is always going to be refundable. And we'll talk about that in a second because I forgot to mention that when you go under contract at this point, let's back up to number 6 here. When you go under contract, most of the time you're going to have an earnest money deposit in the contract. Usually it's 1%. So if you're buying a house for $100,000, you have to put a deposit of $1,000. Usually, like I just said, that's refundable if you cancel unless you designate it as a non-refundable deposit in your offer. So we're going to pay that EMD to the title company, and then we're going to inspect and crunch numbers. Once we inspect and crunch numbers and we're like, hey, I was right, my numbers are good, I'm going to make $30,000 on this deal, let's move forward. You're going to wait to close, basically. And in the meantime, while you're waiting to close, what I suggest is getting a detailed scope of work typed up before your closing date so that when you close, you have your contractors lined up, you have a detailed scope for them, and you can get started right away on this flip. When we're talking about a scope of work, you need to have all the repairs that are needed in the property, and the more detailed you are, the better. What I do is I take the different trades and then I'll detail each item, line item that needs to be done for that trade, like sheetrock, put sheetrock up, finish sheetrock, paint the walls, clean up debris, just install the subfloor, install the LVP floor, install the tub and shower kit above that, install the vanity, install the finishings on the vanity, install the fixtures, whatever that is, right? The more detailed, the better. That's the point, basically. No, I'm taking a long time to say that. And then the other thing that you really need to be aware of is in your scope, you need to have clear terms and expectations with your contractor written out on paper, and both of you need to sign that. And what I've learned to do, because I've made mistakes on my first deals with contractors, I've had contractors threaten to sue me, I've threatened to sue contractors, I've had people walk off the job with money that I paid them and they didn't finish the job. So these are some of the lessons that I've learned that'll hopefully let you avoid some of those situations. But when you do a detailed scope of work, what I like to do is I like to have a penalty for going over the time frame, and then I like to have a bonus for finishing early. So they have an incentive to finish early, on time, and with quality work. And then they have they're disincentivized to go over and to spend too much money and to have a bunch of change orders. And that's something you need to be aware of. And the more clear you can be on dates, on pay schedule, the more issues you're going to avoid later because everything's going to be clear and documented. So number 8, detailed scope. Number 9 is going to be get your bids. I would suggest getting 3 bids with each contractor, or with each different trade that you need, or each different part of the project. I would get 3 different bids. So if I'm redoing the driveway, 3 concrete bids. If I'm redoing the roof, 3 roofing bids. What you don't want to do, this is a big no-no, and you need to remember this, write this down. You don't want to hire the local drug addict who does a little construction on the side. You don't want to hire a handyman. You don't want to hire your best bud from high school who has no job. You don't want to hire people that are desperate for work, because all of those situations point back to the fact or the possibility that there's a reason that they're in those situations, right? And there's a reason that a handyman is not a licensed contractor and doesn't have a legitimate business and doesn't have a website. And maybe some of those handymen do, but I'm saying the more professional, the more business-like those contractors are, the better for you. So be aware of that. So, because I have made that mistake. So get bids and hire contractors. So you got your bids, picked your contractors. You got your detailed scope of work, you got all the expectations outlined, you have all the numbers outlined, you know exactly how you're going to pay them. And really quickly, what I want you to understand about pay schedule is that as they go through the job, you're going to pay contractors draws. I'll tell you, I'll start by saying what a draw is not. A draw is not paying them for the entire project up front. A draw is also not paying them early for the contract just before it's completed. What a draw is, and your bank might make you do draws, but I would suggest you do them regardless. Maybe you're doing this deal in cash. You do not want to pay your contractors in one lump sum. You want to pay them on a pay schedule and split that contract work up in smaller payments, smaller chunks. So usually what I'll do is once a week they get paid. I'll say, okay, this is gonna be $30,000 for your portion of the project. I'm gonna pay you $3,000 a week over 10 weeks. Or it's just something, that's just an example, something to that effect. And when it comes to draws, here's a really good tip to incentivize your contractors to finish your job properly and do quality work is save a fat chunk, a larger in proportion to the other payments, a fatter chunk for the end of the project, for after it's been completed, after the buyer has inspected it and there's no more contract work needed. Everything is done, everything is finished, there's nothing left. Save your final payment until then. If you pay them early, contractors have they have bad weeks, bad months, they have things happen, and they may skip out on your project without finishing it and take your money with them. And I have had that happen to me. And I had to go finish it with me and my friends, one of my friends that was a partner on the project, we personally went and finished the work so we could get the house to sell. And you might not be able to do that. Maybe you can, but save a fat chunk for the end. So backload it, break it up in small payments, and then backload it at the end with a big payment at the end for doing a great job and getting done on time. As you're paying out those payments, obviously, what you want to do throughout the job while they're working is pop in walkthroughs. Say pop in walks. You want to pop into the project, pick a day or do it randomly, however you want to do it, and you want to check on the work. You want to make sure things are getting done on time, on schedule. You want to make sure that the guys are doing quality work. You want to make sure that you don't have guys over there just screwing around, wasting time. You want to make sure that anybody's actually conducting the work over there and not putting you behind schedule. So you need to keep up with the work, and usually I will align the draws with certain points in the project. Like, hey, once flooring is finished, boom, draw. You know, you can do it weekly, or you can do it like by the progress points of the job that you decide. It's all negotiable. So I would just suggest structuring it in some way like that. But you're going to follow up on the job, you're going to keep tabs on it. If you're not local to the project, or you're not close, you're not available, have someone go, have your real estate agent go and look. Have a trusted family friend or whoever, have someone checking on that job besides just taking your contractor's word that they're there doing what they're supposed to. So what I like to do with my contractors, and I learned this after probably 350 trips to Home Depot over the life of 3 different projects in a couple of years. Like there was a year of my life where I lived at probably a year and a half, where I absolutely lived at Home Depot. Like, I knew everybody by name probably. They saw me in there every day. I was taking truckloads or trailers in and out with materials. And what I eventually realized is all that was not enjoyable, and it was me spending time doing something that was not a high return on my investment. So what I do now is I make my contractors responsible for all the materials. They go pick up the materials. Now, I will give them direction on the materials, and I'm going to go over that in a second, but I do not make trips to Home Depot. I don't go to the hardware store. I don't go pick up the any of that stuff unless I absolutely have to, unless the closing of the sale is depending on me going over there to fix something small and get it done. I'll do that, but I'm not going to Home Depot 1,000 times during the project. So that's what you don't want to do. So I would make it clear in your contract, in your scope, that hey, you guys are responsible for all the trips, all the expense of going to pick up the materials and have the materials you need to finish the job. That's what I do now. Some guys like to try to save on materials and buy themselves and do this and that. I don't really do that. As long as I got the project for the price that I want, the renovation project, as long as I know, hey, you guys are gonna do this for $50,000 and I don't wanna go over. As long as I know that and they're within that, I don't care, if they go save money on the materials and pick up a couple extra $100 because they got the same thing at some other store. That's up to them. Now, when it comes to materials for your flips, another important tool that I use now with my contractors is I have a contractor's guide. I spent several hours one day and I sat down on my computer and I created a PDF with all the materials and finishes that I want my contractors to use in my flips. Now, sometimes we deviate a small bit from this, but for the most part, they know, like, if they use any of that stuff, I'm not gonna be upset. They're gonna be on with exactly what I want, okay? So you can actually get a copy of this PDF in the description. I'll put a link in there. You can click that link and download it, and you guys can keep it and use it for your own projects, or you can use it as a template to build your own for your comps and your market with your own finishes. But I would make it clear, either you need to help the contractor choose the finishes and materials you want, or you need to have some sort of guide for them to know what to choose. So, materials. Now, after materials, after you give them materials, the contractors are going to go throughout that 30, 60, 90-day period. Is pretty average for the duration of a flip. They're going to go through that project. You're going to get to the end of that project. It's going to look really kick-ass. It's going to look awesome. You're happy. Things went pretty well. Maybe you had a few hiccups, but everything is going pretty well. Now the house is pretty much done. So what I would start doing at that point is, if you don't already, you need to go find a listing agent. In the current market, the way that things are right now as of March 2024, I would say that you need an agent. When I did my first deal, it was at the height of the market in early February 2022, when people were begging for inventory and couldn't find any homes to buy. I listed my house for sale by owner, and there was nothing else available in that entire town besides one other house that was not as desirable, and the demand was very high. So my first one I sold without a real estate agent. I would suggest that you have a listing agent for your property. So once you get the listing agent, they're going to start doing what they need to do. You need to do your final walkthrough with your contractor, and then you need to arrange for a final clean. Maybe your contractor does that, or maybe you have to hire a cleaning company to come in and clean the property up, sweep the floors, get the dust up, cleaned up, get the trash picked up, but it needs to be ready. You need to get ready for pictures and showing. So listing agent, and then you're gonna do your final walkthrough, you do your final walk, then you're going to get your listing pics. Now, on listing pics, I would not skimp on listing pics and have your Aunt Lisa shoot them on your iPhone. I would suggest spend $200-300 and hire someone in your local market who does real estate photography with a real camera. You can take pretty good pics with an iPhone, and I have done that before, but I would suggest hiring a pro to actually take good listing pictures. You can also consider things like virtual staging. As far as real staging goes, I have not staged a single property that I have sold, and it hasn't taken me more than 45-60 days to sell any of my properties. So I've never been in a market where staging was a requirement, so it's not something I do. Although, it's what you see on TV and all the flip shows and stuff like that. I don't do that. And then, you're gonna list it and you're gonna close the sale. And that sale is gonna be very much like the transaction that it took to buy the property. So once you get to the closing day for that sale, you're gonna go to the bank or title company and you're gonna sign all your closing papers, and you're gonna get most likely a wire transfer to your account for any of the proceeds remaining after the loan is paid for the property. On closing day, sometimes I will still owe money contractors. I'll to contractors and I'll have them paid out at closing, and the title company can do that for you. So if you still owe anything to the contractors or any private money lenders, the title company can wire that money for you on the closing. Now, I have done deals where I didn't use the title company and I actually wired the money to my private money lenders later. But congratulations, you got to the end of your first real estate deal, and it's ready to rent or it's ready to sell and make a profit. And hopefully you made a profit. And as far as profit goes, I would say 10% is the minimum that you should shoot for making on a property. So if a property is worth 200,000, you need to at least make 20 grand. And on 200,000, personally, I think my average is above 20 grand. I would want to make 30 or 40 grand on a $200,000 house. And I definitely think that's doable. So, but I think a good bare minimum for success is like, hey, I made 10% profit in my bank net after all the proceeds went out and after all the loans were paid. So here we are. Congrats. You just made 20, 30 grand, and that's probably a third, fourth, fifth of your previous yearly income, or maybe this is your first time making that much money ever. So congratulations. Now, if you just made 20, 30 grand from one property, maybe you made 40,000, maybe you did really well and you made 50, or you could even have made 70, 60, $80,000. Maybe you did really well. Chances are you're gonna wanna do it again. So I would suggest rinse and repeat and continue to refine this process. Now you need to have the expectation, just know that you are gonna make mistakes. There are gonna be things that you lose money on. There are gonna be contractors that screw you. There are gonna be terms of contracts that you fuck up and somebody takes advantage of you. But just have the full expectation that you're gonna mess this up a few times until you get it right, but fail in a way that doesn't totally melt the deal, right? Do as much as you can to control and hedge against those possible failures throughout the entire transaction in the real estate deal. That's going to give you the best chances for success, is to just hedge and do as much due diligence, stay on the job and check on your contractors, have really clear contracts and expectations, and get the great funding and get the project done quickly. Those are all going to increase your odds for success. Stick around. Appreciate you guys. Don't forget, click the link in the description, get that PDF download for the contractor's guide. Use that on your first flip, or change it or alter it and have some sort of document like that. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. If there's anything I didn't cover, I'm gonna do more videos more in depth on this entire process. So make sure you hit the subscribe button and stick around. And yeah, hope you guys enjoyed.